And on behalf of the entire Nexsales team, I'd like to welcome you to this installment of our webinar series titled Optimizing the Lead. Our presenter today is Brian Carroll, who will be sharing his insights into data-driven optimization processes that go well beyond lead capture. For those of you who don't know much about Nexsales, we provide sales and marketing teams with research that identifies the most relevant and up-to-date contacts in a prospect organization and innovative tools that greatly expand the number of phone connections and relevant conversations that can be engaged in. For those who are interested, we'll be happy to discuss these services in greater detail. Now for some quick housekeeping. There'll be a time set aside to answer questions at the end of this program, and as you have a question, please key it into the entry box that's provided, and as time permits, those questions will be read and addressed, and if the program runs over, we'll answer your questions via email. As I mentioned, our presenter today is Brian Carroll. Brian is Executive Director at MECLABS and founder of InTouch, which is part of MECLABS. He is the author of the bestseller Lead Generation for the Complex Sale and is an industry thought leader in lead generation, management, and optimization. Brian speaks to about 20,000 people a year on improving sales effectiveness and lead generation strategies. And if you're a regular reader of any of the publications that are shown on this screen, you've probably seen him profiled or quoted on the subject of lead optimization. So at this time, let me turn the program over to our presenter, Brian Carroll.
Well, hi everyone. I hope I'm coming through clearly, and I'm going to be sharing my slides with you here in a moment, and really looking forward to sharing what we have in store for you today. The first thing I'm going to do is just tell you a quick little bit about MECLABS. So some of you may not be familiar with MECLABS, but you're probably more familiar with our brand Marketing Sherpa or Marketing Experiments. And so we're a research institute, and what I'm going to be bringing to you is really out of what we've discovered really works. So I've worked in lead generation myself, as Pat shared with you, for over 20 years. And I joined into MECLABS, and what we're really about is helping equip marketers. Now, we've got people connected in from all over the world, and I want to make sure that what I'm doing today is really equipping you. And so the whole point of today's webinar, I can't see you. Some of you are coming in from home offices, some of you are sitting together in conference rooms, is we're going to be talking about optimizing a lead, going beyond lead capture. And right now we're here in December. The year-end push is on, so I know how busy many of you are. And we're all looking at ways how we can achieve revenue. And so what I'm going to be teaching you is really focusing on 4 things today to help you optimize your lead process to get more out of what you're already doing. And what you're going to find in most of these things that I'm teaching you today, what we discovered, I'm teaching you things that are within everyone's capacity. And so we're going to be talking about how to identify the right companies and right people. This is such a critical point, then how to more optimally segment and prioritize so you're investing your energy. We have a precious amount of time, we have a limited amount of energy, and so we can segment and score and prioritize so we're calling into the best companies. And also we'll be talking about how to initiate memorable conversations and some key takeaways for lead nurturing, because it's something that's easy to talk about, but it's something that it's just that. Many people talk about nurturing, but they really aren't practicing it. And when you do it properly, it can really help you achieve huge gains. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to begin by sharing a case study. And this is a company that they focused on testing the quality of data, and they optimized their inside sales and teleprospecting process, and by doing that, they reduced their prospecting costs by 60%. So to give you an idea, if you had a team of 100 people, what this impact would be is that it would be like gaining an additional 50 more people on your team in terms of productivity. So what I want you to look at is the first 2 things. We're all familiar with the sales and marketing funnel. On the left is a teleprospecting funnel, And on the right is an inside sales funnel. The main difference between the two is inside sales is really about closing deals, and teleprospecting is really about taking leads until they're sales ready, which those leads then go to inside sales or to the field sales team. And so what this organization had is they had an inside sales team and teleprospecting team, and we ran a test inside their group. This is test protocol CS356. And to give you some background, this telecom engaged us to run a test to help them optimize their lead generation. And the first thing we looked at, and there's many levers you can pull to get more out of your lead program, but we wanted to focus first on looking at how we could optimize getting more dials to reach the right people within the right companies so they were having more effective conversations. And so the primary research question was, what campaign data will drive the most efficient value? And so as you think about your own team right now, think of your sales team at this moment. They're calling lists. And Nexsales, who's hosting today, this is one of their core businesses. So there's companies like Nexsales that you can talk to that can help you with this. But what we did is we focused on just looking at their list quality. We developed a test where we looked at 5 different list sources. There was the current list that they had, and we took 300 accounts. And what our goal was here is we broke these into segments, and there was a multi-source data that was phone verified, and we looked at specific roles in the buyer process. And then we went down to where we just verified title. Then there was phone verifying that the data was accurate, and then email verified business cards, and when there was no validation. The whole goal here is to make sure we're reaching the right people in the right companies. What they were using was costing them 49 cents. And as you can see, there's a huge difference in cost per name, from $24 down to 49 cents. And so when we applied this test, what we focused on is a couple of KPIs. And when you're looking to optimize a process, you need to have a KPI, a key performance indicator in mind of what you're looking to optimize. We looked at, the first thing was people who are no longer with the company. There was a user-generated list source that we worked with, so it's crowdsourced data. People uploaded business cards. It was $1 a name. And but what we discovered is one KPI is no longer with the company. That was averaging 67%. So nearly 7 out of 10 people we were engaging were no longer with the company. And so that was a KPI. And what they were using before was about 13%. But when we applied it to the other KPI of cost per lead, in other words, how many calls it actually took to reach people, we found that the user-generated list, their own list of what they were using, it took 210 calls to generate a single sales-ready lead based on their ideal customer profile and lead definition. But with the more expensive data, we were only needing to make 77 calls per lead, which brought the cost per lead to $373.45. And so you can see where I'm going here, but that the key takeaway is that if they continue doing what they're doing and they weren't looking at how we can optimize our list to reach the right people in the right companies, the first test we ran, they were averaging to generate their goal, which was 312 leads per rep per year. It would in effect cost $252,000 to do that, versus the more expensive data. So the call per lead and went down to 77. That would have taken the same equivalent, $92,400 to generate that. And so what I want you to take away from this is just in the first test of looking at, if we could optimize the list alone, what impact would that have on inside sales impact? We decreased the campaign cost to generate a lead by 60%. And so the more expensive record, the main takeaway is that the best deal list, the cheapest data, resulted in an actual campaign cost that was 2.5 times more expensive than the most efficient list. And so as you think about your process and you think about your own team right now, look at simply focusing on if we could test and improve the list and identify the right people and the right companies, what impact that would be. And I would encourage you right now to look at the list your team's calling. Who are they calling right now? And to get these KPIs, it's very straightforward. And I want to watch our time closely because we have a lot of content to go through. But I want you to look at your data right now that your team is working on and look at these KPIs. How many dials does it take to reach the right person? And then how many conversations does it take to generate a lead? And out of that, you can begin to extrapolate what's our headcount cost and other things. And so this is stuff you can do in a simple Excel spreadsheet. The next test I'm going to focus on is taking this idea further, which is being able to segment, score, and prioritize. And I want to let you know if you have questions on this or other campaigns, I'm going to allow time for questions. I really plan on teaching 40 to 45 minutes. And so I want to make sure this is clear. But here's some takeaways you can come from this. Cheap data is really expensive when you involve inside sales or field sales or teleprospecting the process. So often the less you spend on data, the more you're going to spend on human effort. So you need to see list acquisition or your marketing lists not as a commodity, but they're a strategic investment. So this can't be a transactional thing. And so if I were to look at the overall success of lead generation, from 20 years of experience, I would say that half of your success, at least 50% of your success, comes down to the quality of the lists you're working. This is also critical when you're doing inbound marketing. So think of inbound marketing as a lot like fishing with a net. And you don't always know what kind of fish you're going to catch. So you need to separate those who are the right companies and those who are the right people. And so think of as you're building your list, whether it's inbound or outbound, of making strategic investments. And we're going to talk about now that next step, which is for inbound lead generation and field outbound lead generation, how you can segment, score, and prioritize and optimize that data. So this is a sample sales and marketing process. You see lead capture we've talked about. Lead scoring's talked about a lot, but when I talk to most marketers, and I had a chance teaching at Marketing Sherpa's B2B Lead Gen Summit, over 200 people in the audience, I said, how many of your leads scoring? 90% of the people raised their hand. And so I said, how many are happy with your lead scoring? There was 2 people from the same company who raised their hand. And the thing is lead scoring is available to all of us if you implement marketing automation, but that the problem is it isn't really connected to results. To know lead scoring is never meant to replace the human touch. It really should prioritize it. So as you think of lead capture, this would be a lead flow of how leads should go into your system. So these are some theoretical things. You have web inquiries, you have social media, you have webinar attendees, you have sales-generated leads, and then there needs to be a process of how you're managing that data coming in. And so the key thing here is that as you're bringing people into your process, you got to normalize it, enrich it, merge and dedupe it. And when you get to segmenting and scoring the leads, the things that you really need to pay attention to is, are people the right fit? Do they match the right decision-making role? And when you apply lead scoring, you got to look at the quantitative data, and then there's some level of qualitative analysis that's going to happen. So salespeople are constantly scoring leads in their own mind. Everyone's been scoring leads since we've been selling. It's just that what I'm talking about is adding more rigor and discipline to that process. And so I'm going to lead in with a case study, and this is how a technology company reduced their cost per lead by 75% by looking more strategically at their lists and their data. So this was a company, it's an e-discovery company that had 25 different campaigns they were running. And so what happened is data was assigned to sales reps as new leads came in, and they were attained without regard to list source performance. So if we did a seminar today, the leads would be given to the reps tomorrow, and then as they do a trade show, etc. So it was just sequential. So what our goal here is which list would drive the most efficient lead generation, and then what we looked at is which list would drive the most effective. And so what I want you to look at here is, you see all these Excel spreadsheets. This is literally what the marketing manager's lists looked like. So as they did campaigns, they brought them into their marketing automation and CRM system, and then those were assigned to the reps. Some of you may or may not have a CRM. Maybe you're giving leads directly to your reps. And so these were all the different list sources that were coming in. As I mentioned, they were being prioritized chronologically. And so what they were focused on really is testing some different media sources. So the marketing team would prioritize testing some of these new media sources. And what the client was seeing is when they looked at the results, they were gauging the success of an event or a marketing campaign based on gut feel, or we spent a lot of money on it, or our customers like this particular event, but it wasn't necessarily connected to the end goal KPI of, in the end, the purpose of marketing or lead generation is ultimately to help your sales team sell. And so as they began looking at it from that lens of what ultimately is moving our KPI to achieve results, to optimize our leads, this is what we looked at when we analyzed their data. We took all the list sources, and this is you could do for your own lists and campaigns you're managing, bring them in Excel. We then looked at how many leads were generated, how many calls were made, how many conversations occurred. And so if you don't have this type of data, don't worry about it. This can be a framework for you to start collecting this data for your company. And what we began looking at is how many, what percentage of contacts did they reach, what their calls per lead, and what their contact per lead was. So this was just looking in aggregate across their campaigns what was happening. And then we looked at how much effort was invested, and we put a straight line cost of $50 an hour, I believe, and it, when we rolled up their overall marketing and sales expense, fully rolled it up. So we were figuring out what their calling cost was per lead. Now, the thing I want you to pay attention to is there's a huge difference in leads. Look at the top. They have it going from $50 per lead all the way to the bottom, $3,468. Pretty huge difference from the sources. And so if they had just continued doing what they were doing before, which is as leads come in, as we do the various campaigns and we assign them to our team, and they weren't prioritizing and segmenting and scoring data, they were averaging $891 per lead. So I want you to think about your own process right now. And again, my whole goal here is to equip you. So I want, I can't see you. I know that you're all in different situations right now, but I'm trying to put myself in your world. And I really want to think in perspective, have you think about your own process at this moment. How are you managing leads as they come in? I'm going to guess you're probably managing your leads in the same way. Now, if they prioritized by doing an analysis of saying which sources appear to be the most effective with the same amount of effort, they were able to generate a cost per lead on average of $216. And that's with the same list. And what I want you to recognize is how they achieved that is that they started looking at right in the center here in terms of who are we talking to, what percentage of conversations are we having, where are we having the easiest time talking to you, how many calls does it take to generate a lead, what's our lead ratio. And so they began using the data that was already available to them, looking at the metrics of their team. And so what I want to encourage you to do is these are really straightforward things. You can have your team manually track this. There's marketing tools that allow you to get this information as well. There's third-party providers that provide call center management software. But what we did for this particular company is it's literally just capturing hashtags on paper, putting things in Excel, and tracking the data and digging in. So I wanted to share this with you because anyone can do it. There's things you can make it easier. But the net impact is the overall cost per lead was decreased by 76% if that customer focused on the most efficient lists. It's taking the same lead. So when I talk about optimizing it, it's taking what you already have and it's going further with it. It's getting more out of it, and that's really what optimization is about. So think about this in your own world, how you could apply these two ideas, looking at your list and how you can better segment and score your data to focus on the most efficient and effective lists in your own process. So you don't always need to start with new lists. You can optimize the ROI from your current lists. And I want you to realize right now, so MECLABS, we talk a lot about testing. Many of you are testing already. Every salesperson tests, every marketer tests. The difference is being more scientific about it. Testing means that you're learning and gaining wisdom. You're getting insight. And to do that, you need to measure your results. So what I'm just encouraging you to do is bring more scientific method to your process. And over time, this testing is going to help you understand patterns and gain better customer wisdom. So when you're looking at testing, you don't want to neglect qualitative analysis. And qualitative and quantitative, again, some of you this might be review, but quantitative is where you're looking purely at numbers. Qualitative is where you're talking to your sales team. You're hearing from them the feedback on the leads you're getting. You're listening to the real-world conversations taking place and getting these questions answered. So what I want you to do is have a few takeaways when you look at your list quality. Dials to sale. So the amount of calls, the fewer calls it takes to get a lead. So if it's more than 100 calls to get a lead, there's probably more effective lists out there. And so what I would encourage you to look at is figure that out. How many dials does it take to get a lead that's sales ready? And I'm not spending a lot of time talking about a universal lead definition. This is something I wrote a lot about in my book, and you can go to the B2B lead blog and get more information. Simply what a universal lead definition is, it's what you and the marketing team, the sales team and marketing team have agreed on what exactly and when exactly is a lead sales ready, meaning the sales team is going to engage it 100% of the time. And so the other thing I want you to look at your list and your data right now is how many dials to disqualified. So in this case, disqualified means when someone's not qualified to buy from you, that they're not a fit. So this could mean if you're selling scientific equipment, it could be a student or intern who's requesting information because they think your technology is cool. They're disqualified. They can't buy from you. If you have a very expensive, complex sale and you have a small business that may not be able to afford hundreds of thousands of dollars investment, they're disqualified. So disqualification really means that they're unable to purchase. They're not ultimately a fit for your customer. So here, what I'm talking about is dials to disqualified. The higher the number it is, the better. So the more calls it takes to find someone who's disqualified, the better, because that means your list quality is better. Does that make sense? I'm going to be getting feedback in terms of questions, but feel free to ask questions, and Pat and the team, if there's something you think would be relevant for me to speak to, just let me know, and I'll just keep proceeding here. We're now going to talk about initiating a memorable conversation. And here's the thing. The biggest struggle I think we have in marketing today isn't necessarily getting people on the phone. That's a struggle. It's not necessarily figuring out who to call, because often we can figure that out. I think the biggest challenge is combining two things, which is relevance and timing. And on the customer side, so when someone downloads a white paper, they engage your content, it doesn't mean that they're ready to buy yet. And this is something we all know, but I can't tell you how many times I've downloaded content from great companies where I get a follow-up call. So I downloaded an ebook and someone reaches out to me asking me for a demo. And at that point in time, in my buying process and my thought sequence, it's out of sequence. It's not relevant to me to offer a demo at that stage. What would be more relevant would be to connect with me about what I was interested in. Why did I download the ebook, and how they could be more helpful to me in providing content that's related to that. The other thing is timing. And so this is something that's a challenge for everyone. It's not a question of if they could buy, it's more of a question of when. So when we combine relevance and time together, that's how we're able to be memorable. And so what I want you to think about is this is something that all of you can do. And it's about timing your touches. And so what I want you to begin thinking about is this is a leap, but I want you to start thinking like your customer. We as companies and as salespeople and as marketers are thinking about how we can get our needs met, how we can move to that next level of engagement. And I think the challenge really is moving out of our needs and stop trying to be interesting, but let's be interested in the customer and let's focus on their needs and put ourselves in their world and try to think like them and how they're thinking. So what I'm plotting out here is this is a lead generation model thinking about the customer buying process. And so someone might identify a need. I'm going to go to the internet, I'm going to research and try to get more information on that. And what I'm really looking to do is I have a problem. I'm trying to find information how to get that question answered. And so I begin researching solutions. I might find a paper, I might find an article, I might go to a blog, I might talk to a colleague, and then I'm moving through a process of where it's becoming more mature. I'm starting to look at specific solutions, and I'm now become a sales-ready lead. And so there's all these steps, and there's a whole bunch of micro-conversions that are taking place that I'm not teaching and talking about at this stage. But the thing here is realize that what people engage is going to depend on where they are in their buying process. So as you think about your own lead generation model and you're bringing the pieces together, realize that not one specific thing is going to take everyone from one end of the buying process to the other. You need to be multimodal and use multiple lead generation channels to carry that conversation forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about how to apply that specifically to lead nurturing, and I'm going to do that by, again, we teach through case studies, so I'm going to share another case study with you. And so this is a IT desktop management firm, and you might relate to some of the struggles that they were having. So at this point in time, they're at $80 million in revenue. They sold through channels, but they also had a direct sales team of 27 salespeople, 10 marketers. And so what their goal was is they were getting leads, and in fact, the challenge is they had actually doubled their lead production from one year to the next. But that the marketing team was generating more lead activity but getting the same results. And when we looked at their Salesforce.com, their lead to sale pipeline conversion rate was less than 2%. The marketing team felt that leads were going into a black hole. There wasn't a closed-loop feedback process. And bottom line, they really couldn't measure their impact and ROI. And I want you to understand this is a field marketing team who reported up to the VP of sales. So the marketing team for the field and the sales team all reported the same leader. So there shouldn't be any misalignment. But the problem is that they weren't moving the needle with their lead generation. And so the question is how could we optimize that? What we suggested is that marketing could start running itself like sales. And what I mean by that is the big idea was to create a marketing pipeline. And the bigger and better the marketing pipeline became, that would impact the sales pipeline. So that was our hypothesis. And what we recommended that they do is that their previous model was that inquiries were all being routed directly to sales. So inquiries here were and leads were all being handed off to the sales team. What we said is let's test adding a lead nurturing process, which is let's not send everyone to the sales team until they're actually ready to talk to the sales team. And the question is what do we do with those leads? And what we suggested is that they then develop a lead nurturing process. to take these leads further. And I want to just move ahead quickly. The results were, and we'll talk more of the how-to, is that by holding the leads back and handing them off later when they were ready to talk to a salesperson, and the marketing team focused less on producing activity and more on progressing people from interest towards purchase intent. And that's really what lead nurturing is. They saw a 375% increase in the number of sales-ready leads. And so by actively nurturing and holding leads back, they improved their lead to sales opportunity rate. And so for those of you who are using salesforce.com, you know that the model is you convert leads to opportunities. And so what we saw is a 200% increase within 9 months of running this program, and it was moving up very rapidly before it got to that level. But for you to take this idea and implement it, I want to give you a roadmap. And also on the B2B lead blog, I wrote, because I knew we'd be doing our webinar today, I knew I'd be teaching on this. Some of you don't have a lot of budget. Some of you don't have a lot of time. I put together a 6-step bare bones lead nurturing strategy you can apply that you can take and steal from and use. But I'm going to teach you that right now so you can apply that in your own companies. And you can read that in detail, so some of you might want to share this with your other team members and put this in place. But let's quickly identify what is lead nurturing. It's about having a relevant, consistent conversation with viable potential customers regardless of their timing to buy. And what that really means, that you notice the first phrase here, relevant. The second point is consistent. That's how you improve the timing. So if you go earlier to when I taught, timing plus relevance equals memorable. And so this is really creating memorable conversations with people. To do this, you need to begin understanding your audience. And so what I'd encourage you to do right now is look at your database, figure out who is in your list. Start segmenting them out right now. What do they share in common? Who are the titles? What types of companies do they work for? What are the industries that they're in? And the key thing here is you need to begin understanding your audience, because I want you to move from company logic to thinking like your customer. And a great way to do this is actually think like a publisher. Start thinking about understanding your audience to understand, like a publisher does, editorially, what would be relevant to them, and use that to begin developing a messaging strategy. We don't have time to teach on developing personas, but I actually give some tips on developing personas in the blog post on the B2B Lead blog. And I want you to understand that the key thing here is, out of understanding your audience, you can then begin plotting out. And easy places to go is talk to your sales team. Here's a question that you can write down to ask your sales team right now. What are the key questions our customers are asking when you first talk to them? Another follow-up question you can write down to ask your sales team: what's the content you share with potential customers that helps move them forward, that helps them convert and take the next step? And this is going to give you clues on how to develop a messaging and devise a messaging strategy. As you get this information, you can start organizing content. I'd encourage you to look at your team as a laboratory where you can test ideas and get feedback. And so this is bonus material, but I want to, right now, those of you who are calling in from other parts of the world, we're coming into the end of football season, what we call football in the U.S. And so you notice the football team huddles between every play. And when they don't huddle, it's because they already have a play figured out. But I can almost tell you by proxy how effective a sales and marketing team is by how frequently they huddle. And so if it's once a month, it probably isn't going to move the needle. If it's once a quarter, doing a quarterly business review, well, that's important, but that's not often enough. So you need to be huddling to really get in and get that feedback. And for those of you who are on the marketing side, I would encourage you, if you aren't getting out with your sales team or on the phone with your sales team and listening to real-world customer conversations, you're missing a huge part of opportunity to understand and develop empathy for your customer. So again, that's bonus material. I want to come back to what we're teaching. So you organize the content you put into tracks. This is a company that I talked about in the case study. There was 3 main drivers that moved their buying process. They had an economic buyer, they had an influencer, and then they had a champion. So the economic buyer was the CEO, the influencer was the IT manager, and the champion was the IT director. So we plotted out for 1 quarter, and we did this for the average length of their sales cycle, 9 months. So there's actually 9 planned touches. Based on what we learned from talking to the sales team, looking at the customer, understanding the questions they asked, where we plotted out content that would be relevant. And so this is what those processes looked like. And so we put together 3 nurturing tracks that were unique. So when you understand your audience and you organize your content, you can start to build tracks. And the easiest way to build content, and this is a struggle for people who do lead nurturing, is I don't have any content. I would say most everyone does. It's probably in your email inboxes where you've answered customer questions, but it helped that one customer. When you think about it, it could probably help many potential customers. This is a theoretical way of repurposing content based on some research. So here's a research chart. That research chart could be turned into a webinar chart. That webinar chart could be changed into a video clip. That video clip could be repurposed into tactical tools. That could be put into an email. That could be put into a blog post. So the key thing is I want you to think of repurposing in reusing content. And as people are consuming it, you can use it in multiple different ways. But the other way is using third-party content as well. It's you can get permission from people. Often thought leaders are happy as long as they're cited to share their content with you. But the key thing is the acid test to know if you're nurturing people is what you're sharing with your potential customer would be valuable to them, even if they never bought from you. So that is really a good acid test to know is what I'm sharing with people, nurturing, because the key idea here is nurturing. You could replace that with helping. And so the best marketing and selling doesn't feel like marketing and selling, it feels like helping. And so when you apply that towards your customer, get out of company logic to customer logic, this is where you start optimizing your leads and going further. And so measuring and refining. So as you share this content, you're going to look at your KPIs, how many registrants you get, attendees, replays. So these are the different things that you're going to measure as you're doing your nurturing process, and to bring all the pieces together, know are we making progress. And so what I want to do is, like I said, I wanted to allow time for Q&A. I'm going to summarize what we've talked about today. And I want to make sure that this is very practical and helpful for you as you think of your optimizing your lead gen process, as you think of helping your sales team sell, driving their time more effectively. We've talked about 4 levers. And so when you identify the right people and the right companies, the key takeaway here is collaborate with your sales team to determine and do list testing. So think of your inside sales team, think of your field sales team, think of your channel partners, and make a point to start testing your lists if you aren't doing that already. Again, there's great companies out there. Nexsales didn't know that I would do this. I've used their data. They're great to work with. There's other providers, and what I would encourage you to do is you have to test your data. You can't just rely on one provider that's going to meet all your needs. You need to test it. But what I encourage you to do is to do that. The second step to apply this takeaway is set up a process that allows your team to increase pipeline velocity. And so the whole goal here in optimizing is define your process from lead capture all the way to analyzing the results. And so your goal really, as you think of optimizing lead, is to shorten your time to revenue. And the best way to do that is start looking at where the stop points are. One of the most effective questions, and this is bonus material that I didn't teach on, but I'm going to teach it now, is this. The most critical question I found in marketing is to sit down with the sales team and ask them, what could we do that would ultimately help you sell? What should we start doing that would help you sell? What should we stop doing that's not adding any value? Those three questions could help determine what you're going to be driving in 2015 with your plans. But the thing here is sit down, get aligned with your team around the process. When you're initiating memorable conversations, think about moving from company logic to customer logic, so matching your conversation timing and relevance with where your customer's at. So when you have a conversation with someone, you know, in human relationships, we don't get married on the first date. You know, we don't kiss before we go out on the first date. There's a time and a season, and so you need to think about how you're treating your customers right now, and matching the relevance of what they've inquired with, what they've learned, with what would help progress them to the next level. The fourth thing is, if you don't have a nurturing process, this is something I'd encourage you to build. And Marketing Sherpa did a survey of 2,500 marketers. We found that 60% of marketers don't have a formal lead nurturing process in place. It's something that's essential. And if you do have one, have you optimized it? Are you running tests to get that better? And so those are the four things. As I mentioned, we're a research lab. If you're interested in being involved in our research, you can go to MECLABS.com/partners. That will have more information. Again, there's lots of free content. And also, I just want to say thank you to Nexsales for hosting me today. We're going to be opening up for questions. And so they've brought and sponsored today's session to you, and I'd encourage you to consider them as you're looking at your list process. So with that, I'm going to wrap up. We're going to move to questions. And Pat, do we have questions?
We have one so far. We have a couple of comments, some very nice comments. But as far as questions are concerned, this one came here a while back when you were talking about the number of leads that one should expect optimally to have to go through, or the number of contacts in order to get a lead. And the question is, do you find that the number varied based on the level of the contact or the industries that are being engaged with?
Absolutely. To the person who asked that question, that's a great question, and yes, it does vary based on the level of contact and the industry. So I was giving some rules of thumb when I talked about saying, hey, if you're making more than 100 calls, but for example, if you're looking to reach CEOs at Fortune 500 companies, it's very difficult to get them on the phone. And so your call to conversation rate will likely be lower unless you're working with their assistants or other things. But what I would say is the key thing here is to benchmark. And in that particular test, we had a benchmark of what is it right now. So what I would say for the person who asked that question is start tracking how many calls are being made right now, and then looking at how you can make that better so it takes fewer calls to reach the right people and the right companies. And tracking these activity metrics at a more micro level will help you begin analyzing and seeing what's happening. And there's some very straightforward ways of doing this that isn't going to require a lot of overhead for your sales team. I've seen one company we worked with has their sales team, they have a sheet of paper that they make hash marks on, they hand it in to an assistant who then compiles that in an Excel spreadsheet. So again, that's a very simple, easy, straightforward way. There's other companies that are running Salesforce.com, and they're using third-party tools like Inside Sales and others, which track and do the dialing for their team, record conversations, and manage those details. And I'm sure Nexsales even uses those kinds of tools with the services that they provide as well. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would encourage you guys to do is, if you don't have the data, start and begin simply collecting it. And as you're looking at it, you're going to start to see patterns emerge and measure. So I would encourage you to get those basic things done. The other thing I would say is, from a nurturing standpoint, I get asked the question a lot, and I just wanted to chime in because I'll probably just answer this one more question. If we don't have any more, we can wrap up.
We actually we do, Brian. We have a couple that you want them now. Okay, here we go. Well, here's one. A participant asks, do you find that call versus email in nurturing campaigns is changing?
It is. That's a great question. And so the champion right now of nurturing tactics is email. And in fact, we've seen studies that are showing that salespeople are booking almost as many appointments through email as they are via the phone, too. So from a selling standpoint, email has really changed how people are dialoguing. And so what we've done is, so the first question is, email is definitely impacting. There's actually multiple channels you can use for nurturing. So every salesperson has 4 tools available to them to nurture. Right now they have the phone, they have email, they have in-person face-to-face, and then they also have snail mail, also known as the postal service, that they're able to send things through. And so those are channels every salesperson has. In marketing, we can add other dimensions like social media, so that can be from Twitter to social media like LinkedIn, and some of you might find for your audience Facebook's applicable. Also events. So today's event, we're doing a webinar or a live event, can also be used as part of a nurturing process where you're engaging people in a trade show and you're inviting them to a seminar or event, etc. So email is impacting it. The phone is an important part because it's another aspect of the human touch, and the phone does make a difference, but we're just finding strategically using the phone that more and more companies are finding just relying on the phone alone isn't going to move the needle. And so inside sales teams are need things like email templates for nurturing. They need content set up for them. That would be nurturing content. And so I'd encourage you, if you don't have marketing automation or CRM software, a simple way to help equip your sales team in using email more effectively is to give them templates they can keep in Outlook that for the various nurturing scenarios. So all they need to do is put someone's email address in and personalize it with their first name, and they can send those out. So you can get a lot more sophisticated through marketing automation and tracking things based on behavioral, and you can segment things and be more sophisticated. But I would say right now, email and phone has changed a lot, and I want to make sure I'm not answering the unasked questions. So
okay.
Hopefully that answered it.
And I have one more here, and I think we will conclude after this question, but it goes to messaging, and it reads, in a hyper-competitive world, any other tips or tricks on how to make your conversation more memorable than your competitors?
Yes, and here's what it is. How you sell and market to your customers tells them how you will serve them, and it's very distinguishing when you are engaging your customers in a way that's helpful. So instead of trying to be interesting with each interaction, I said this earlier, instead be interested in them. And what I found is that it's very distinguishing when the pressure's off and your sales team's not calling at every call. It feels like it's a plus to that person's day. Every touch feels like a plus to their day. And the goal here is to add value. What I'm really saying is the most distinguishing factor I'm finding, and this is something I'm actively researching, is developing empathy for your customer. And it is amazing because your competitors right now may be under the same pressure you are, which is, how do I meet this quarter's revenue goal? How do I get this result? And the sales team's measured month by month, quarter by quarter. But what's interesting is when you apply things like nurturing, that is just a strategy, but is a way that you're looking to take the right people in the right companies. So your question here would be, if I can serve the people where it's not a question of if they go by, it's a question of when, and do a better job of that, that actually gives you a competitive advantage unlike any other because customers know how you sell me is how you serve me.
Mm-hmm. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap the program up. I just really want to mention quickly that our plan is to have a recording of the presentation sent to you shortly. Also, we're going to be in contact in the next day or so to get your shipping information so that you can receive the free gift that we promised for attending the seminar. And we want to thank you, Brian, for all your time today and your insights. And we hope that our paths will cross again in the not too distant future, and we hope that we get a chance to interact with people who are interested in optimizing leads and in increasing the top of the funnel and in moving opportunities through the funnel utilizing methodologies like yours. So thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate it, and we at Nexsales appreciate it, and we'll be back in touch very shortly.
Thank you.